Welcome to self-discoverywisdom.com, formerly known as Self-Discovery Media. On these podcasts, you're going to hear people who speak from the heart. They've taken the journey in life. Many things have happened to them, but they've changed it to happening for them. And in their strength, their courage, they've discovered their abilities and their wisdom, and they are now sharing it here with you. Do enjoy each show. We bring it to you with love and knowing that it's going to help you on your journey of life. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Nature of Addictions, right here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest today is Bob Gardner. And we're going to be talking about addictions in a different way. Yes, there's all the addictions, and he's been through that, but he's a freedom specialist. He's an author, a transformational specialist, speaker, and host. And he's the founder of Freedom Specialist, a body-based approach to happiness, health, and well-being. Bob is also the author of Built for Freedom and hosts a podcast, Alive and Free. And as a transformational specialist, Bob aims to share these unique tools with the world to help them find happiness and health and well-being on autopilot after 18 years of being trapped in an addictive patterns and on the brink of both divorce and suicide. Something inside Bob told him it was time to quit, not time to quit just yet. So against the prevailing wisdom that said these problems are permanent, Bob chose to choose and create a permanent to eliminate them all from his life. His body-based, no-nonsense approach to freedom has since helped thousands of people leave their struggles behind and find real freedom and happiness. And in addition, Bob's in intensive power-packed in-person retreats, transformational coaching, and online resources have supported people struggling with everything from chronic pain, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, childhood wounds, addictions, OCD, and they can finally take their life back and begin to thrive again. Now, as I said just before the show, addictions isn't just to do with substances. We all get addicted to something, and sometimes that is childhood drama. Sometimes there's somebody said something to us and it became a wound, the lack of self-worth, so many things that we hang on to because that is the addiction. We're hanging on to it and we don't let it go to become who we really are meant to be. And it's a pattern that sometimes we don't even know is there. So welcome to the show, Bob.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Listen to your lovely voice and have a great conversation.
Addictive natures, we've all got them. But as I said, with patterns and programming, we don't realize we're in it until somebody points it out, or until we become aware we're repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome.
Absolutely. Um, I, I, Part of it, I think, is learned. A lot of it is just biological in
Yeah.
nature. Even down at the smallest level of our biology, there is some evidence of cognition where even the individual cells are striving to cling to life and not to pain. And it's natural that it would show up in your average human being, whether or not they've had what we would normally call trauma in life, that all of us would cling to. Well, this feels good, so I want to go that direction. And all of us would run away from that feels bad, so I want to run
Mm.
away from that. And well, there's nothing wrong with that. It tends to lead pretty quickly to cycles that are hard to break.
Mm. And as I said, I don't think we're aware of them. Our parents did it, so we did it. Society's doing it, so we do it. And
Yeah.
it's I'd call it the nudge, nudge, wink, wink, or cosmic two by four, which is the universe saying to us, no, this is wrong, change your pattern. This is not serving you. Be aware of it. And then wackaroo, have I got your attention now? And
Yeah.
kind of, we would like to prevent those wackaroos with people, but sometimes that is really where you come to the realization things aren't working.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's how it happened with me. I mean, I knew that I was struggling with it. I mean, I had grown up in a really religious household, so there were a lot of moral strictures in place and teachings around what was right and what was wrong. And initially, my compulsions were around pornography and use of pornography and looking at sexual material and whatnot. And that later expanded into drugs and other means of escape, whether it was just food or searching out like even adventures and things like that,
Mm,
anything that could kind of help me escape the sort of nightmare in my own head.
mhm.
And I think the whackaroo or the two by four was really the night that my wife was like, I can't handle this anymore. I think I'm done. And I was like, wait a second, I'm
Hmm.
barely escaped as it is, and now I got to do this alone. And so it forced me to have to come to terms with the fact that I wasn't getting better. I was just kind of skating by and having great experiences, learning some great things, but nothing was changing. And
Mm.
the pain, the deep pain was still there for her and for me. And so I needed to figure out another way.
Sometimes those, wackaroos, we have to have them. When the nudge, nudge, wink, wink isn't enough. And it's kind of like putting on the brakes and really taking stock, right? And it's like when somebody really shows you the mirror that you truly seeing yourself, because we
Mhm.
kind of look in the mirror, I don't see what everybody else is seeing. And
Right.
then you get that realization, oh my God, I know what they mean now.
Absolutely, for sure. I would say that as much as having a marriage relationship and children can be challenging at times, sometimes it's one of the greatest gifts because they're a constant mirror. You look at
Yes,
your kid and you're like, oh, I do that too. Dang.
yes. Yes, they're a little mimic of us. So if they start doing something that you don't like, it's like a question, where did they get that from? I didn't know I had that habit.
Yeah.
We're habitual creatures. We really are. We kind of find a habit that's comfortable, even though we may know that it's not progressive or it's not letting you grow. We kind of settle there because it's comfortable. And of course, the other big word that comes up is fear. And this fear of the unknown, fear of rejection, fear of not being loved, fear of not being enough, and this conditioning that's been put upon us, which I feel is very much a societal conditioning of having to live up to a certain expectation and not ever feeling enough, really leads to substance addiction or shopping addiction, sex addiction, any other form of addiction, trying to validate your presence in this world. And it really can send people, off that track, just trying, well, when will I be good enough?
Yeah, so those are some of the things that I had to learn how to address within myself and as I've worked with other people. I've wondered sometimes if that started, I mean, it's obviously been around for the entirety of human history. It's not
Yeah,
like humans haven't felt like they haven't measured up because there's
right.
always been a human with a parent who said that's not good enough.
Yes.
And then the kid sort of imbibes it and brings it up. But I've wondered if it's gotten worse as a result of the sort of manufacturing industrial revolution and this sort of factory line, fabrication set where everything has to be the same and there's quality control, and then you add that to social media, and so now there's this
Mm,
presence and everybody's trying to measure up to some sort of ideals, and it's taken something that was already present and just you
hmm.
know
Magnified
multiplied
it.
it
Yeah,
exponentially. Yeah,
yeah.
big way.
Um, I don't know what it is about human nature that we've always got to seek approval from people. And that, to validate ourselves, we need approval from everyone else. And but why can't we feel enough in ourselves? And if it doesn't measure up to somebody else's expectation, go, that's okay. I know how I am.
you know I mean, I think that's a great question, but I think if you look at human, like one single human life in human history, there's a couple of factors at play here. A single human life as a child, when they're born, they aren't enough when it comes to getting their own food,
Hmm.
making sure they're operating well inside of the family unit or the tribal unit or the society or something else like that. And so, in a very real way, a child isn't enough when it comes to these very external measurements, and they have to learn the skills of being enough. And so the difficulty with that is that the child assumes that its inner being isn't enough when it's really just its skill sets aren't enough.
Right.
But
Yes.
on top of that, you look at these old societies, and not measuring up in society and not fitting in meant that you would be outcast, and being outcast meant that you would literally die
Yeah.
some sort of death or barely thrive. And there are enough television shows of survivors out in the wild right now,
Hmm. Hmm.
and they don't last long. And
Nope.
if they do last long, they really go through a lot of stuff on their own. There's
Mm.
value to being able to fit into society. And so the challenge in front of us is not to just kind of like flip the bird to the rest of society and say, well, what you care about doesn't matter,
Hmm.
but really to be able to navigate those environments without mistaking
Hmm.
whether or not I make a mistake in a social setting as being a mistake in an existential way.
Yes, exactly. Drawing that line, you're always going to find people that you don't get on with. And that's okay. That's preference. You're just not vibing. Don't take it personally. Right? I mean, we kind of feel like if this, oh, this person doesn't like me. What's wrong with me? And it is, you're just not connecting. You're just not on the same frequency, right? When you're around your own vibe tribe, you're all connecting with each other and you lift each other up. But we're not designed one size fits all to gel with everyone. And that's okay. We also don't have to hate someone because we don't connect with them, or they're vegan and somebody else is meatarian. It's like we need to kind of chill and just accept, not my cup of tea, wish them well, and don't take anything personally with their reaction towards me.
Yeah, the underlying problem there, I mean, this is something that the Buddha was talking about
Mm,
2,500 years ago. In many, many ways. I mean, the story that's told from his perspective is, he's sitting there. There's this old man that comes to him that he's heard about the Buddha. He has these wonderful hopes that he'll be able to solve his problems. So he sits down with him and he tells him, like, look, I have this farm and it's great, but sometimes the weather isn't great, and so then the crops don't do well. And then there's my wife, and she's wonderful, but sometimes she doesn't listen to me, or she doesn't. And then there's my kids, and on he goes, all of these different problems. And the Buddha looks at him and he's like, I can't help you. And the guy's like, what? But I thought you were this great teacher that you were supposed to be able to solve my problems. He's like, no, everybody has all of these 83 different
hmm
problems. Everybody's going to die. Everyone's going to say all these other things. Your issue is that you believe they shouldn't exist.
mm,
The issue underlying all of this is that
hmm
all of us have made the mistake of believing that what I think should be happening
hmm
is what should be happening. And that's the
Yes.
same as arguing with life. And every
Yes.
time you argue with life, you lose.
Yeah.
It feels miserable. And so that's really where the suffering
Mm,
is that we believe that like what I believe should be happening. It should be
mm.
sunny right now instead of rainy.
Right.
There shouldn't be forest fires. We were talking about that before the
Right.
show,
Yes. Yes.
right? Well, if I say that, the Buddha talks about this as like, okay, cool, you get hit with one arrow. That's the physical reality of what happened. Do you stab yourself with a second arrow?
Mm,
Meaning, oh, I have this thought that this shouldn't be the case, or I have this emotional response. And so then you end up suffering more, and all of that extra suffering is your own making, as opposed to, well, yeah, okay, cool, there's a fire. I better move. But the
right.
reality is, anybody here in the listening, if a bear walked into your house right now, you wouldn't be sitting there arguing, going like, you shouldn't be here, you shouldn't be. You would get up and move.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
and, and yeah.
I mean, suffering, I feel, is a choice. I mean, there are people that suffer in such horrible ways that there is no choice. But and for them, we need to stand up because we need to release them from that. But struggle is a part of life. Struggle is how we learn. Struggle is how we discover our abilities, our strength, our courage, our skills. And we're all and when we've kind of gone through the struggle and we've mastered something, then we feel good about that mastering, but there will always be another struggle around the corner. But we can choose to suffer through the struggle or face the struggle with a more of a triumphant mind and go roll up our sleeves and what have we got here? Right?
Yeah. I mean, the evidence around like struggle is I think that's an unfortunate word. It's common, it's a common one. People talk about
Mm,
life as a trial or an affliction or something. Life is just life.
yes.
And we
And
learn a
it
lot
has
of different
struggles.
ways. Yeah, we learn a lot of different ways. And one
Yes.
of them is through effort and trial and error, and
Yes.
some of it is through play and curiosity. And
Yes.
but like there's all kinds of different ways that humans learn, not only through struggle. And I think your mentality of like, well, your attitude toward it is really what makes the difference.
Yes.
If instead
Yes.
of looking at it as a struggle, you look at it as, hey, this is something going on. What can I do with this? How can I learn?
Yeah.
Then it becomes an opportunity instead of
Yes.
um, some cosmic hand that's
Out to
coming down
get you.
to
Yes.
back
Yeah.
down. Yeah.
I have the same approach with fear. There's the common sense fear. Don't walk in front of a bus. Don't put your hand in the fire. Don't stab yourself with a fork. It'll bleed. Those are common sense fears. And if instead of looking at the fear of the unknown and feeling crippled and not being able to walk forward, change it to wonderment. I wonder what's out there.
Mhm.
Ask the common sense fear to travel with you. to
Yeah.
protect you, right? But have that wonderment and the willingness to explore and to learn. Because if we don't have that, then we paralyze ourselves and fear takes over and cripples us, and we never grow and we never explore. And we just wither away, become bitter, angry, miserable, and then blame everybody else all around us.
Yeah, I mean, the reality of a lot of the people who are struggling right now and they're wanting a way out, whether, I mean, we're on a podcast talking about the nature of addiction, right?
Yes.
Means that they're in a cycle that they want to find a way out of.
Mhm.
And that means you got to live differently. You have to
Yeah.
experience life in a way that you're not used to. And that is the unknown.
Yes.
The unknown actually is the place of your own freedom.
Hmm.
And so to be able to go to it with this sense of wonderment and excitement and curiosity, and one of the things I had to confront was fear.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, I'm a martial artist from the time I was a kid. I did a lot of these body-based methods that I developed came out of initially all this movement stuff because none of
Hmm.
the other stuff was working. And so I ended up training with these ex-Russian operatives and really deeply getting involved with, okay, stand there and I'm going to hit you and you're going to see how this feels and you're going to like learn how to recover from it. Or we're going to be fighting in the water and you're going to be half drowned, or I'm going to pull a knife on you. And I went to it because I knew that I was being controlled by fear. And there
Hmm.
was nothing else in my life that I could see that would help me get down to the root of fear and start to be able to be like a friend with it. Because it
Hmm.
is helpful.
Hmm.
It can help you survive. It's not that fear is bad
Right.
at this biological level. It's just
Yes.
that it's just information. And
Yes.
so, how do I become friends with the information that my body is giving me so that I can use that information to my benefit and create more opportunities for myself? So, it was intense, obviously, and it has informed a lot of the things that I do with other people. But really, the confrontation of fear, if I look back at why I was involved in addictive behaviors from the beginning. At first, it was curiosity. I'm
Hmm.
curious about how the plumbing works, and pornography was one way to figure that out. Because my dad was afraid of saying the wrong thing, or my mom
Hmm.
was afraid of saying the wrong thing and didn't know how to negotiate that kind of conversation. But then later on, I was afraid of social situations. I
Hmm.
didn't feel like I fit in. And so it was easier for me to go hang out in my own place and,
Yes.
just look at things online where there was no risk involved.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, I was afraid of money issues or I was afraid of trying new things. And so this became a place for me to like coddle myself and feel better
Yeah.
rather than being able to confront the fears that I was carrying.
Escapism, right? Is when something's too painful, you want to escape somewhere else, where even if you feel numb, it's better than feeling the pain. But if we aren't willing to feel the pain, we can't feel the healing, because retreating is not an option. We're always going to have to face ourselves somewhere along the line, and it can be painful at times. But if we're willing to go push through that pain, that's when we start the healing, not by retreating.
Yeah, this is where I think the wisdom of being able to step back and ask yourself the question, like, has there ever been anything in my life that has been permanent?
Hmm.
Because frequently we look at the pain we feel, and the natural story is, even all the research around depression and whatnot, is that a person in that state has difficulty believing in a positive future
Mm.
because you just mistake this current sensation for something that will be eternal.
Yes.
and and that needs to be challenged.
Yes.
As intense as anything is in this moment, the mistake of believing that it is eternal and will always be there is a lack of perception. It has nothing to do with reality, and
Yeah.
that's what's controlling a lot of this fear of running away. But this is going to pass too. Okay, it'll eventually be over. We're
Hmm.
good.
Right. I mean, we become very much prisoners of our own mind, of our own fear, of our own conditioning. And, that prison is that you've got the key. You can let yourself out. I've interviewed some people who have had the most horrific things happen to them that never should happen to a human being. But somewhere along their line, they made the choice to go through the process of healing. And in that, discovered the courage, their strength, their abilities, their passion, their purpose. And they can talk about what happened to them today, um, in order to enlighten how to move forward, but without the pain and without the attachment. But if we're not willing to go through the process of healing, we're always going to be attached. to something that we perceive as painful.
Because you're attached to anything that you're like, if you perceive something as a problem, you're as attached to it as if you are running around bragging about having
Hmm.
an identity as having overcome it.
Yeah.
Um, for me, it's interesting to look back at my life because all of it feels like it happened to another person. Like I just happen
Hmm.
to have access to all the memories and all the experience, but it doesn't feel like it was me that went through it. To that extent, like a lot of people talk about recovery and addiction, and what they're referring to is a lifelong process of, managing and coping. But the word recovery in every other
Hmm.
situation and context is one that says you got back to the place as if it hadn't happened, to where you
Right.
were as capable or more than
Yeah.
before it happened.
Yeah.
That's real recovery.
Yes.
And so if you are really truly recovered from anything that's happened to
Yeah.
you, it will be like it didn't happen, except that you have all this wisdom with you.
Yes. 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 And that again, you can talk about it detached.
Mhm.
You no longer relive it. It doesn't press any buttons. It is what happened to that person back in that time period. I am no longer that person. So I can see it without having any attachment to it. And that is that inner growth of that willing to grow, willing to allow ourselves. I mean, so many people, I call it the finger pointing. It's their fault. They did this to me. There's three fingers pointing back at you saying, where's your accountability? What are you going to do about it? And the only one that can really help you is you. Other people can help you on your path with their skills and their tools. But if you don't listen, learn, or apply those tools, then you're not going to learn. Nobody can help you unless you're willing to help yourself.
And that's because it's an inside job. I mean, if
It
you
is
look at the
100%.
nature of where your emotions come from, your behaviors come from, you have an outside world that has in some way come in contact with your body, right? Whether that's light through the eyes or sound through the ears or something. And in response to that, your brain goes through this recognition process where it labels this thing and says, that's good, that's bad. And it creates a sensation in the body of something that's pleasant or unpleasant. And then
Mhm.
this is all way before we're aware of it.
Yeah.
And then the body reacts to it with tension patterns and aversions or with an attempt to cling to something that feels really good. And then possibly some thoughts arise or emotions
Mhm.
arise. And then from those thoughts and emotions come thoughts about thoughts and thoughts about emotions. And then
Yes.
eventually you have beliefs and worldview and an idea of who you are. Eventually this comes to the surface and you find yourself reacting in some really huge ways.
Hmm.
The only thing that other people can do is change that outside environmental circumstance.
Yes.
But all that inside stuff,
Yep.
all that reactivity, that's
Yep.
all inside.
Yeah.
So the expectation to have somebody else come and or the hope, and I lived this. I really
Hmm.
desperately wanted some father figure or some savior figure or somebody to swoop in and
Hmm.
remove the pain from me,
Hmm.
remove all the struggle and remove all the suffering. And um, it never happened. And the reality is it can't happen
No.
because all the struggle and all the suffering is my own making, even though it's
Yes.
at a reflex level.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So then the question that arises is, okay, cool. How do you retrain those reflexes?
Hmm.
Because we weren't born doing this. So we've trained them along the way to
Yeah.
produce this misery on
Mm.
autopilot.
Right. Yeah. Made
Which
it a
means there's
natural
nothing
running program going on in the background, right? Yeah.
which means there's nothing wrong with us.
Right.
If we can train ourselves to produce that on
Hmm.
autopilot without effort, then could it be possible for us to train ourselves to produce happiness and joy and health and well-being on autopilot without effort, without us having to sit there and maintain it in willpower and hold ourselves in and call ourselves an addict in recovery for the rest of life? The
Right.
reality is it is, and it happens all the time. You just have to know how to get down to that layer of the mind that has been up until now reflexive.
Right. And we can do the work, and we can, rise back up and step into a new being. But the cellular in our body has memories. And every now and again, that cellular memory is going to come up. And then people panic. I thought I'd got rid of this. Why is it back? Am I going to go back to where I was? No, it's just a memory. Look at it and actually reflect on how far you've come from it. How putting in the work, being conscious about your choices, honoring yourself and your beautiful gift that you are to society, and look at that and go, thank you for leaving. You may now go. Right. And the thing is, I'm a big person of pause and reflect, because that's how you measure how you're moving forward. And sometimes people get to a crossroad and they panic, or old memory comes up. Just reflect on how far you have removed yourself from that, and that keep going forward.
Yeah, if you think about it, a memory is nothing more than a series. I mean, how memory is built in the brain with the hippocampus kind of directing all of this material is a reconstruction of past events.
Hmm.
And so you don't have like implicit memories just like stuck somewhere in the body. The brain is like taking this whole host of stimuli and then going, huh, well, I guess in response to that, we need to produce this. You may not have any control over which memories arise
Right.
or which
Exactly.
ones don't, but you do have control over how you train your body to respond to them. So it's not just, oh, well, the memory comes and every time I just turn around and I cope with it. It's legitimately like if a memory shows up and you feel this negative reactionary response, if you in that moment are able to calm the reactionary response, then go back and look at the memory that was quote
Hmm.
unquote triggering
Hmm.
and reshape your relationship to it
Yeah.
in that moment.
Yeah.
Then what happens, and this happens very quickly, I just did it over the phone with a guy the other day. Uh, what happens is their body stops responding
Mm.
negatively to
Yes.
the thought that they
Yeah.
had before.
Yeah.
So within a very short amount of time, we're talking a few minutes,
Hmm.
all of a sudden, the thing that you're like, oh my gosh, this memory came back. Then you go back and think about it, and your body's like, huh, I'm not reacting to that the same way. It's
Right.
that possible. Just like you
Yes.
reach out and touch a flame and your
Hmm.
body learns really quickly that's hot. Your brain can learn that fast. Your
Yeah.
body can learn that fast to change its patterns. It's just a question of no longer, again, arguing with life. Oh, my body
Right.
brought up memory.
Yes.
My brain brought up this memory. That shouldn't be happening. Well,
Hmm.
obviously it is happening. So,
Yeah.
no, let's
Deal with
use
it.
that as an
Yeah.
opportunity to
Yeah.
free you of every other thing related to that.
Yes, exactly. And there's always going to be situations that you find yourself into that kind of brings about a memory of something you've left behind. Like for an alcoholic, you're going to be in situations where other people are drinking, right?
Mhm.
And to ask everyone else not to drink because you're not drinking, I feel that if you can get to a point that you could be around the table where everyone else drinking and you don't require a drink, then you have mastered your own addiction there, that it no longer bothers you. So I look at it, it's the same if people have hurt you, if you can be around them and no longer feel the pain, right? I feel that you've then done the work. Where it's not affecting you, because we don't always have control of who or what situation is around us, but we do have control of how we choose to react to it.
Yeah, I mean, and then you got to remember, I came from the standpoint originally of really compulsive, addictive use of pornography.
Hmm.
That's one that like you see it, you've already consumed it the moment you've seen it. It's not
Hmm.
just like, oh, I'm in the room with it and I need to cope with that. And so a lot of the things that I had to do boiled back down to treating it almost like a martial art. I
Hmm.
had a teacher one time. He looks around the room. He's got his English accent, and he's like, "All right, who here knows what to do if someone pulls a knife on you?" And I'm like, "Okay, all right, what's he gonna say?" Because the answer that everybody knows is run like mad, right? And so somebody says that, and he's like, "All right, who here's a good runner?" So they pick some guy. He's like, he grabs a knife, a training knife, still pointy, hard, sharp, but like not like a sharpened
Mhm.
knife. And he's like, "All right, run." And the guy's like, "What?" Bolts for the door, and within 3 steps, my teacher had just slashed him a few times. He comes back, he turns around, and he says, "See, the problem is you assume a lot of things when
Mm,
you say run every time a knife is there. You assume that the exit is behind you and not behind the other guy. You
right.
assume that you're faster. You assume that he doesn't have a good throwing arm. You assume
Mm,
that he doesn't have a buddy. You
mm,
assume that there's not somebody you need to protect and you have to stay
mm.
around and deal with it. You assume a lot. So you
Yeah,
better learn to deal with the knife.
yeah.
Then if you can run, you do. But if
Mm,
you can't, you deal with it."
exactly.
And I remember just sitting there with that going, this is exactly what I have to do with the
Mm,
pornography or with, when I had a sort of faith transition.
mm,
leaving an old faith that I had been raised in, and all of the blame and the
Oh,
resentment that
yes,
I kind of
yes.
built up there.
Yeah.
How do I decommission all those
Mm-hmm.
things so that I can be around my family or be
Mm.
around friends and not feel like you people are associated with this thing?
Yeah.
It's all the same process.
Yeah.
Whether you're dealing with addiction, depression, anxiety, PTSD, anything else that's happened, all you're dealing with is a trained response to a
Mm-hmm.
certain stimulus.
Yes.
You can retrain a response,
Yeah.
and you're way smarter than a dog. And so if you maybe you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but you can teach an old human new tricks any day of the week.
If they're willing. Again,
Yeah.
goes back to that free will. Some people are addicted to the actual addiction, not what they're addicted to, but the having an addiction. Yeah, no, I could never give that up. No, I could never do that. No, this is my lot in life. Until somebody says, enough, I need help. Somebody guide me. I'm willing to take the steps forward. You can't help anyone. We can't go in and rescue people. When I was a child, we were at our seaside home and we had these steps that went down to the beach. And when the water came up, the steps. And my brother and I were kind of chasing the waves, going up and down the steps, letting the waves time to chase us. And this rat came up and it started running for the water. And I kept trying to save it by getting and trying to chase it back up. And no matter what we did, that rat ran into the water to die. And I was only probably around about 7, but it had such an impact on my life is that when
Mm.
something or someone has made a choice, however hard you try to change that choice, it's still their choice.
Yep. I remember, I mean, this brings up the question of, okay, cool. Let's say a person is in that space where, like it or not, maybe on the surface they don't want to be in that
Mm-hmm.
behavior, and so they complain about it. They tell other people about it, and they feel bad about it. But deep down, there's some element of them that's still choosing it. The question then becomes, how do you get a person into a situation where maybe another choice is possible?
Mm-hmm.
For me, one of the things that was really, really powerful was to admit that I liked my situation.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was at a seminar or something. It was like 5 a.m. I'd finished a morning workout and I was just going through some of the processes that I had developed over time. And I started looking at it and I was like, oh my gosh, I really like porn. Oh no, I'm not supposed to. I was having this crisis. And
Yes.
then the next thought that showed up was, well, why do you like it? What is it about it
Mm.
that you really like? What's the payoff you're getting
Yes.
out of it? And I sat back and I was like, well, I feel this chemical flush in my brain that's kind of exciting. I have my heart beat in my chest. I feel like a little bit more alive. It's risky. There's this adrenaline inside the system. I have control. I don't actually have to go face all of my life problems. I get a chance to escape from the other difficult things that are going on. And I had this big, long list of things that I was getting out of my compulsive behavior. And the same thing with when I was into drugs is the same idea. And as I sat there and looked at it, I was like, huh, so what I really like about it isn't the thing itself,
Mm-hmm.
all these other payoffs. And so
Mm-hmm.
then the next question that I had was like, well, where else in my life do I feel those things?
Yeah.
And then I started compiling this list of like other things that actually felt risky or that felt like they gave me adrenaline or that really sharpened my focus and helped me get into places or that made me feel like I had control over my situation and now all of a sudden I had this other list of options. I had a menu of things that I could start
Yes.
doing on a
Yes.
consistent basis
Mm-hmm.
that might supplant my drive for using pornography or
Mm-hmm.
drugs or other things
Mm-hmm.
to feel that way. And
Yeah.
it was really profound to sit back and look at, no, I really like having this. And people don't like to answer the question that way.
No.
I'll talk to them and I'll be like, so why do you like depression?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
they're like, I don't like it. I'm like, well, what are you getting out of it? What's the
Yeah.
payoff? I remember in my depressive mood swings, like I I would have an excuse not to socialize. I would have an excuse to like work less in a day
Mm-hmm.
because I was feeling down or not help with the dishes or something at home or like I was milking it for all it was, even though it wasn't a pleasant feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I was keeping it around because it was enable me to avoid other less pleasant feelings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, depression is something that I have suffered with, but I think it's more a chemical imbalance. I suffer from an illness, or I have an illness. I'm not letting her say I suffer from it. It's traveled with me for the last 27 years, and depression is one of those. And there's no rational reason you can't negotiate with it or anything. It's there. And so what I do is, if I need to take something for it, I do. If I get to that rabbit hole. Otherwise, I put on things that I know that are going to soothe me and lift me up, and that is music, doing a show, something that I know I can redirect myself into and see myself through it. But it's looking at, why has this depression come? Sometimes it is due to the illness because I've pushed my body too far, and this is one of its reactions. And sometimes it is, I've taken on too much. I've too much on my plate. I've overloaded myself, and this is my body saying, you know, drop something, put it up in a ball up in the sky and have it wait there, and then get back to what you can manage. And then I find that I can work my way through it. So it's understanding why it's there. Because if you get it, you get it. But why is it there? What can I do to be proactive in in releasing it, by I'm overloading myself, or what can I do that lifts me up out of the depression? Because you can't negotiate with it, snap out of it. It's not something you can snap out of, but it is something you can redirect that energy into something else and replace it with something else. But you've got to know what it is that lifts you up.
Yeah, in a big way. I mean, depression itself, every emotion that you can think of on the planet, whether they're long lasting or whether they're just fleeting emotions, they're in a sense, if you really look down at it, how do you know that you're depressed? How do you know you're anxious? How do you know that you're stressed
Mm.
there's something going on in your body
Yes.
that involves tension and
Yes.
chemistry and
Hmm.
breathing and posture and whatnot. And so the question in front of a lot of people is like, okay, cool, how do I get out of this?
Hmm.
What they're trying to do is manage their internal chemistry.
Hmm.
They're just often being told that the only way to manage it is with chemistry from the outside
Hmm.
instead of chemistry from the inside. So
Yes.
what you're describing is I'm going to use some outside resources to cajole my body into
Mm.
producing a different chemistry. So you are managing it. You are
Yes.
actually changing, and over time, the assumption is you'll eventually retrain your system to no longer prefer depression.
Uh,
And at the
uh,
same time, you're using it as a beautiful like way of understanding, oh, maybe I've done too much. Maybe I've overloaded
yes.
myself.
Yes.
And it's information for you,
Yeah.
which is beautiful.
I mean, it used to be, I used to go really down the rabbit hole, like the despair, like somebody's come in and just pulled my heart right out, my guts
Yeah.
right out.
Yeah.
And it is such a desperate feeling, because you can't rationalize it. It is over, overwhelming completely. I don't get like that anymore. And if I do go to the substances, it's just purely to help me through. It happened to me this year, but I also had the RSV virus. And I was producing a book, the Forgotten Children series, and I was doing a few other things all piled up on me all at once. And so I needed the help. Um, but for me, it's like, okay, you're there just to help me get through this until my own system can do what it needs to do, and take back charge. Because I was a sickly child from the age of 2. I got an eczema when I was 2, and the Asian flu went round. So I've been in and out of hospital. I've been in and out of drugs. I've been in and out of this all the way through my life. So anytime I can avoid drugs, anytime I can avoid that medical treatment and manage it myself, I do. And that doesn't mean I've managed it and it's never going to show itself again, because some things come up, and it does. But I think it's we learn to be that, yes, it doesn't matter if it shows up. I've got you. I've got you. We can get through this. And I think that is, be your best friend, right? Be your best friend and say, don't punish yourself if this is coming up again. All right. Okay, maybe you've overdone it. All right, pay attention. Pay attention. You need more rest, or you need this, or you need that. You know, be that best friend as you would be to someone else, saying, hey, you're overdoing it. Come on, you're taking a day off. We need to be that best friend to ourselves and speak to ourselves in a loving, nurturing way, and know when we've pushed too far. And what do you need to do right now that's going to lift you out of this? But do we give ourselves that time and that permission to do so? And I think that's something we need to learn, is how to be our own best friend.
Yeah, it's definitely not taught.
No.
at all. Not, I don't think maliciously either. I
Yeah, no,
mean, we live
just
in an
just not
environment that's
just not
highly
on the
critical.
agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it comes across as like these, sort of sappy platitudes or
Mm,
something that don't really have any teeth in them, where, you go to your average job market or in schools. I mean, junior high is brutal
mm,
for children. It must be the demon spawn of Satan or something. Because I mean, it's not taught.
no.
The notion that you can be an ally to yourself is not taught, because all of your senses are outward bound, and everything in
Yes.
you has been, this is to blame for this, and this is to blame for my happiness, and this is to blame for my misery, and this. And so the notion that all of that could be coming from the
Mm,
inside isn't actually intuitive for
no.
human beings.
No.
Even
No.
if they logically agree with it, oh yes,
Yes.
the chemistry is built on the inside.
Yeah.
Somewhere in their body, they're like, but she made me mad,
Yeah. Yes.
but he did this.
or
It
or
doesn't feel
or
intuitive.
religion, how dare I reach up to God directly? I'm meant to go through the church, and
Yeah.
that I think has an awful lot to do with it as well, because we're taught, give it to God, you've got to go to the church, you've got to go and sacrifice something for God to take
Mhm.
care of it.
Yeah.
Without realizing your God, or Gus, universe, spirit, source, whatever you wish to call it, is in you. You are a part of it. All right. And so those resources you want are within you all the time.
Yeah. I mean, your life is being created from within. I mean, if
Yes.
the cells dividing, the thing that's beating your heart is inside your heart.
Yes. Exactly.
So it's not trying to supplant the idea of some God out there, but just that power, that eminent, you have more intimate access to that than you have
Yeah.
to medicine or any of the other things
Yes.
that you're using. One
Yes.
of the things that's helpful is to build upon successes. So
Mm-hmm.
I remember being worried. Like it's a constant worry. I was in 12-step programs for a while, looking at what was going on. And around the rooms with all these different people, there was this underlying current of worry of like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen if I get triggered. I don't
Mm.
know what's going to happen if I run into this and if I run into that. And I wanted to step back and go like, I don't want to have to run my life on fear, because
Right.
that destroys your immune system, that destroys
Mm.
your creativity
Mm-hmm.
and your intelligence and your physical
Mm-hmm.
strength. So I want to run my life on intelligence. I don't want to be stupid, but I want it to come from this positive place.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I do that? And um, it was, let's start building on successes. So one of the reasons I went and trained with the Russians was because then I could confront fear and realize that I didn't die. I
Yeah.
actually learned some things. I'm doing better than I was doing 20 minutes ago.
Yes.
Okay, I've learned a few things. Maybe I've got some time to go. All right. So I was building on my ability to directly confront emotion. And one of the things that I did with that was I started practicing going into emotional states and
Mm.
coming back out. So on the way to work, after making a bunch of noises and like loosening up my face and stuff, I would spend a minute or two going from like anger, and I would really try to get into a state of anger on my own in my car. Nobody's going to get hurt, except the people on the crosswalk. They'd walk by when I'd be in the middle of this, and they'd be like,
Woohoo!
"Oh." So, so no, and so I would go until I felt, yeah, I'm angry. And then sometimes I'd need to use memories to do it, to sort of trigger that. And then I'd be like, okay, from anger, I want to go to inspired. And so then I would have to like practice moving my mind from anger to inspiration as quickly as I could until I really felt, okay, inspired. Okay, now what about confused? All right, let me go to a place where I feel confused. All right, what about curious? Okay,
Mm.
curious. Okay, what about bored? Okay, bored. What about tired? Okay, tired. What about goofy or mischievous? And so I practiced going from one emotional state to the next until I developed some level of confidence that it didn't matter what emotional state I could get into. I knew, and my subconscious knew, that that's not a sticking point. That's not the end. I can
Yes.
go from there anywhere.
Yes.
And I would even use movies to do it. I'd be like, well, what movie would make me
Yeah.
upset or inspired or sad or something? And then I would like practice it with movies and anything I could, so that I was developing and building this, steady sense of I am confident that I can handle any emotion and come out of it and not be controlled by it.
Our emotions are an indication of what is happening around us. As if we're mad at something, if we're hurt, this or that. And it's be aware of the emotion, what has triggered the emotion, maybe spend the emotion, but don't become emotional about your emotion, right?
Yes,
Because
because
it's there for a
that's
reason
supposed
for
to
you to go through it and recognize it. There's a great movie that came out many years ago, and they've come out with a second one, Inside Out, which was all
Yeah.
about the emotions. And now they've come out with another one, which is now bringing depression and anxiety into it, because of course we're seeing that on the climb at the moment. And I think it's such a, I remember actually into pre-interviewing a psychiatrist, and I was telling them about this movie. And then we had a show booked, I think, for a week or two later. And when they came back, said, "Thank you. I'm sending everyone to that movie. Before they come and see me, everyone's going to see that movie." Because half the time we don't realize we're reacting to something that has triggered an emotion. And we get emotional. I'm mad. Why am I mad? Who's made me mad? And you're not mad at what has just happened. You're now mad the fact that you are mad. And you get madder at the fact that you're mad. And it just gets blown out of proportion, right? And then what happens when things are blown out of proportion? Things are said, things are done that you can't take back, that wound people, that wound yourself, and that become a far bigger problem than what the problem really was in the first place.
Yeah, I think, for help for the people listening, what I found to be one of the most reliable, helpful methods of dealing with it was to go through a process that I call emotional ninjutsu. Because I grew up on the Ninja Turtles and I thought it would be cool to
Yes, I
invent
remember
my
that.
own martial art.
My son too, yes. And his
And
father was a martial artist, so
okay, cool.
yeah, yeah, he did an Ninja birthday party, and he was, Michelangelo, and he was Schneider and all of that. So yes.
That's good. So it's four parts, right? A, B, L, E. When you can do these four, you are able to
Mm,
handle your emotions.
right.
So the A was acknowledge, which is what you're
Mm,
describing. And so the simple thing that I would do was start to narrate it either out loud or in my head. Oh wow, I'm suddenly starting to feel like as if I were a sportscaster.
right.
And Bob just
Mm,
barely felt this wave of anger rush through his body. It manifested itself in his chest and his heart tightened. And I started describing what part of my body was stuck in
mm,
it. Most people think that an emotion covers all of you, but
mm,
that's just because they're not used to paying attention to
right.
where it is.
Yeah.
So I'll ask them like, "Are you serious? Are your butt cheeks angry right now? Like, what about your big toe? And then they start to realize, oh, it's not bigger than me. It's just a sensation that's somewhere.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so then from there, from the acknowledge piece, then I'd be like, okay, cool. B, breathe different.
Yes.
Doesn't matter which way you go. You can
Yeah.
breathe faster, you can breathe slower, you can breathe heavier, you can breathe quieter, you can hold your breath. But as long as you change it, then
Yes.
you're changing the mind attached to that old breath.
Right. Take a
And
breath. Yes.
then I go L, loosen.
Yeah.
Loosen meaning you got certain tensions that are associated with it, so shake it off, whatever. And then E, escape. Get into a posture that feels like it is not vulnerable to that anymore. And
Mm.
that might be lying down. It could be. So one time, for instance, my wife came into the room. My website had broken. Doomsday thoughts were running through my head,
Yeah.
like we're never going to have food again. Well, like all this stuff, and I didn't realize it because I'm worked up trying to handle this. And then she comes in and asks me if I want to go fishing with her brother on the weekend with the boys. And my brain is like, oh, woman, I am
Yeah.
busy trying to save the family from the apocalypse, and I'm never getting a weekend off. And so like it's building up, and I knew that would not go over well.
No,
so
would not
so
go over well.
so I dropped onto the floor and I started doing snow angels on the carpet, like, ooh, ooh. She's like looks down at me. She's like, "Are you okay? Do you need me to like punch in the chest or something?" And I'm like, "No, I'm good. My website broke, and I started feeling massive frustration when you came in the room because I'm trying to do too many things at once. Maybe now is not a good time for me to answer that question. Can you give me a couple hours?" And she's like, "Sure." Walks out. I had gotten up. I was breathing better.
Yeah.
My muscles had loosened,
Right.
and I was in a better state, not just from her question, but than what I was feeling before. And I was able to solve the problem in like 30 minutes.
But that's my point. It is like, kind of taking that breath and just taking a step back, calm down, whichever way you do, calm down, right? And like if somebody does approach you, it's okay for you to say, not right now. I'm just dealing with something at the moment, not right now. I'll get back to you in a moment. And then just, nothing ever is resolved when you're in a state of tension. There
No.
is no solution, nothing. You have to bring your body back down to calmness. You have to center your chakras. You have to just calm down, even remove yourself. Go for a walk, go somewhere else, go for a pee break, whatever. Come back and look at whatever it is you're dealing with. Then you've got clarity. You never, ever, ever find a solution when you're tensed up because
Nope.
nothing is running properly. The oxygen, the blood, the energy, nothing is running properly at all. And all you do is get more frustrated and more tense. And then you get more angry. And what do you do? Boom, hit the first person that comes in the room, right? So
Yep.
it just, you owe it to yourself and to everyone else around you to calm down, whichever way you need to do that. And as you said, just pay attention to your breath, pay attention to where is it hurting in the chest, relaxing the body, pay attention to where you're at. No blame, no shame. Just acknowledge you're in that state. What do you need to do to get out of that state? And if you have to remove yourself from a situation, do it. Do it. If you have to do it right there and then, do it. But whatever you do, do it. Don't harbor it because it will only grow bigger than you can control.
Yeah, and remember that you're already doing something. Whatever
Yeah.
you're doing, you're already doing something. So it's not like it's going to cost you more energy to do
No,
something more helpful.
no.
You're already expending the energy. You might as well
Yes.
enjoy it.
Yes. Channel it to something else.
Yeah.
Start doing jumping jacks, run on the spot, whatever it is. Like, as I say, spend the emotion because it needs to be released,
Yeah.
but spend it in a
So,
healthy way.
and one of the things that I found helpful also is that when you notice that you're having an emotional state, I'll be like, man, I just got really angry right now. That's cute.
Mm,
Or like, oh, that's adorable. Look like it. Because when I use this language that minimizes it, it
right.
makes it into something that it's still there. I still have to do something with it. But now it's not like this behemoth monster
Right.
just
Yeah.
rose out of the mist from the forest and is
Yeah.
hunting down my family. It's
No,
like,
my,
oh,
my
look.
2-year-old tantrum self has just shown up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, look, adorable little angry pixie just came by. Okay, cool. I can handle that one.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is learning to handle it, isn't it? I mean, why do we go to substance? Why do we get stuck in certain behaviors? Why do we repeat certain patterns? Because we haven't been taught how to handle it. We haven't been taught it's an inside job. We haven't been taught that there are skills and tools that we can use on ourselves. It is not up to someone else to fix you. You're not broken. Your just programming is running in the
Nope.
wrong order, right? There's certain program you have in there that really, like on a computer, if it was running, it would slow the computer down. It's an old program. You've got a new program you want to put in. You have to release the old one to get the new one in. So I think it's also being cognitive of what that new program is as you face the old program to delete it and put that new program in. You can't just delete without something else taking its place.
Yeah, I mean, because you're always going to reframe. You're going to naturally look at reality differently,
Yeah.
whatever you do. So it's not even that you have to think about, well, what am I going to replace it with? Just
Mm.
challenging the thing, what
Yeah.
if it's wrong, is already replacing it with a
Yes.
doubt in that old way of doing things.
Hmm.
This is, I mean, what you were describing here just reminds me of what I frequently tell people, is that freedom is really a skill. It's not a
Hmm.
pill.
Hmm.
But it's no different than the skill of learning to walk.
Hmm.
And a lot of people, like, the language around addiction is like relapse. And that
Mm.
has this connotation that you're back at the beginning, but you're
Yeah.
never back at the beginning
Right.
when
Right.
you've had an experience. You just have that experience plus all the rest of them.
Hmm.
And but like if you think about a baby or a toddler learning to walk or your grandkids, right?
Hmm.
th- there's like curiosity in them. They're trying to learn this new skill. It's hard. And so they naturally go back to their old way of doing things, crawling around, when they can't get the knack. But at
Yeah.
some point in time, they catch the knack. And even if it's wobbly,
Hmm.
now all of a sudden they realize I'm on 2 feet instead of four. I can see things I couldn't see before.
Yeah.
I can reach things that maybe mom and dad wish I couldn't reach before.
Yes.
I can go faster than I could go before. Oh my gosh, I prefer this.
Mm.
And so like there will come a tipping point
Yes.
where as you develop the skill of
Hmm.
freedom, that like your body automatically starts to do it for you. So what was it, like 6, 7 months ago, I had a full-blown panic attack. It was because I had not eaten anything that morning. We were running a retreat in the next couple of days, and I was like swamped with overwhelmed with a lot of logistics and things. I
Hmm.
had just done a really heavy workout that morning, way beyond what I should have done. And then somebody called with an emergency. So as I was talking to him, my eyesight started to bug out. I felt my breathing contract and everything in a full-blown panic attack. And I was like trying to write something out, and then all of a sudden I felt my body take over, and it started breathing different, and it started moving different on its own. I was like a passenger going like, sweet, my body's
Yes.
handling the panic attack. This is awesome. And it lasted all of like 2, 3, 4 minutes.
Hmm.
And by the time I was done, I was clean, I was clear, where that would have lasted maybe for a long time,
Yeah. Yeah.
years past, just because I trained my body to do it
Yeah.
naturally.
You put it on automatic
Hmm.
so it knows what to do when you're in stress. You
Yeah.
don't have to think it. And I feel, a lot of the problems there is that we think too much and we don't feel enough. And for me, I'm a person, feel the thoughts, because that you actually understand which thoughts are more relevant to something. So when your body feels something, then it knows how to react to it and what thoughts to bring about. If we just think something, then we always seem to go on a treadmill or put a negative to it, or, what if, oh God, what if, instead of what if, right? And I
Hmm.
think that when we feel it, we connect with it more. And when we have that connection there, and it knows what to do, again, your body's now become your best friend. I know what to do. It's okay. You have your panic attack. I'll step in. I'll help you through this.
Yeah.
And it's like that best friend that's looking out for you. But it felt it, right? You didn't give instructions to it. It
Nope.
felt it. And so it knew what to do, because that feeling is so much stronger than our thoughts. And then it gives the thoughts what it needs to know, so the thoughts can have clarity in what it needs to do.
Yeah. I mean, your body, as you said, is a best friend. I tell people it's the single greatest personal development gift you've ever been given.
Hmm.
Is the thing that qualifies you to be alive on the planet. If you
Yeah.
didn't have a body, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
Right, exactly.
And it is also the thing that has this innate native intelligence. It replicates skin cells. It
Hmm.
closes wounds. It
Hmm.
rebuilds bones. It digests your food. It
Hmm.
regulates your breathing when you're not busy messing with it. You know,
It
it
creates
manages
a
all.
child.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And it manages all of your thoughts while
Yes.
still going like, but we still got to keep this person alive, even though
Mm.
those thoughts lead toward death.
Yes.
And this is the thing that's the skill to learn as to how to be in tune with it and allow it to be in many ways in the driver's seat. Your thoughts, your mind needs to be a part of the process of navigation, but your mind can project into the future and I assess outcomes and see where it wants to go and set goals. Your senses can't. They
Yeah.
don't see the future. They only see the here and now.
Yes.
So what you have to have is the senses have to be in the driver's seat so they can
Hmm.
handle the road and all the bumps.
Yes.
But your mind, your thoughts have to be in the navigation seat so they can tell it where it's got to drive
Right.
and to take the next left.
Yeah.
And then it can handle everything.
That's the point, isn't it? It's a tandem. You're working together.
Yeah.
And I'm very much about the knowingness, which for me is the channeling the wisdom, having it resonate with truth in the heart, giving the action to the spirit, for the mind to know what it needs to know when it needs to know it. And there's that knowingness. Well, how do you know that? I just know. It just is. And it's such a like a deep breath of knowledge, where you don't need to challenge it, verify it, justify it. It simply is. And it's a great place to be. And whenever something is presented to me in my core says no, I don't argue, I don't question, I know it's right. Because if I went against it and said, but my mind says this, I'm guaranteed I'm going to make a mistake. But my core is that wisdom. It is the compass, the navigator. And in trusting that, I understand why I should or shouldn't. Or sometimes I don't know why I should or shouldn't. It's just I trust that not to go down that way. And I think if we could be more in tune with ourselves, more in tune with trusting that inner voice, and really being at one with oneself, we're never alone. We've always got the answers if we're still enough. And we're going to go down the right road to where we need to be.
Absolutely. I don't have any doubt about the possibility of life being able to navigate itself. I think it is important to recognize that your body also has habitual reactions and patterns
Yes,
that your
yes,
mind can help to
yes.
quell. So it's not only that the body always has the answers and that the mind is stupid and doesn't,
No,
but that they really do work in tandem. And
yes.
many times a body's habitual reaction to something is just a body's habitual reaction to something
Mm,
that was intelligent. I mean, you survived 100% of everything that you've ever been through.
right.
So it was intelligence at work and it's got you to this point.
Hmm.
But if you want to upgrade that
Yeah.
intelligence, it involves going back and, saying, okay, cool, this worked till now. What can we do to improve it?
Hmm.
And so sometimes that means retraining even a body's response to
Yeah.
its environment.
Yeah. If we look at, I do an awful lot of shows on medicine, doctors and things like this, and they all say the same thing. We are taught to address a thing in the body or a thing in the mind. We're not taught to look at a person as a whole being. All right. It's like car manufacturing. I'm responsible for the doors. Someone's then responsible for the engine, but they don't speak with each other. And this is, I think, the same with our own bodies when we are discontent, when we're feeling lost, when we're feeling a need for addiction, or validation or approval, is because we're not connecting ourselves, to the whole of us. And if we can be in tune with the whole of us, our senses, our thoughts, our heart, our spirit, our body reaction, then we'll actually have a vehicle that really is optimized and really can take us far in life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What I've seen in the work with all these thousands of people and in myself is that the level at which you place your identity, where you kind of rest your identity, tends to be the place where you get the most reactivity, like you're trying
Mm,
to protect that the most. And it creates some level of inability to sense the other parts of yourself.
mm, mm-hmm.
So a lot of people are very, very out of touch with their bodies
Yeah.
beyond the gross level.
Yes.
So they're not really in tune with these deeper and deeper layers inside. So it feels sort of empty. They know they
Hmm.
have skin, but inside it feels empty. And so they're running around seeking to fill that void.
Hmm.
And what's interesting is that the things they choose to fill the void tend to be things that wake up the inner parts of themselves,
Hmm.
gives them a strong emotional experience, makes their heart beat a little bit faster, changes up their breathing, forces their blood to pump in different ways, gets their nerves stimulated, makes their brain go in whole lots of different ways with whether it's psychedelic substances or something. And so or like they have love or sex or laughter when they're
Hmm.
seeking out like humor and stuff like that. The things that they're looking at to try and fulfill their life tend to be things that are actually trying to wake up the other parts of themselves that have been left in the
Yeah.
closet. And if you can consciously and
Yes.
proactively go and find those out,
Yeah.
you may find that just naturally you stop feeling the urge to go look for those other
Hmm.
things.
Yeah. That it will kind of naturally be presented to you because your body is aware of it and knows
Mhm.
how to indicate when joy is around you.
Yeah.
When laughter is around you, when anything is around you, because you start to navigate from the inside out, and your senses are receiving different messaging. And just simply even going for a walk with a child and a dog, watching the joy that they have, the rustle of the wind through the leaves, the ocean against the shore, all of these things are talking to us. They're all igniting from the inside out. And when we truly tune in and connect, it makes us feel so much more alive. Well, when you're alive naturally, when you're really feeling that connection naturally, you're not going to go and seek unnatural things to stimulate you.
Yeah. Um, as an example, or maybe a practical thing that somebody could do, like if you're going on a walk, if you, most of the time, like it's really easy to have your mind catch a thought and then you start wondering, which means that you're only aware of your thought, really.
Yes.
You're moderately aware of your body walking or something, but
Mhm.
your awareness has been captured by a thought. There's nothing wrong with having a thought there. But so the exercise would be to let it be aware of the thought, and then let it be aware of a sound, and then let it be aware of
Mm,
some visual thing, and then let it be aware of your heartbeat. And so
mhm,
you're just bouncing your awareness from
mhm.
the outside to the inside so that you're never lost in a myopic feeling that that one thing is the only thing in existence.
Yeah.
And often our suffering from thoughts are because they feel like the only thing in existence.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so, just a simple practice can, and this takes practice, but
Yes.
to pull your awareness to
Yes.
a very real sense, oh wow, there's that beautiful blue light there coming off of that thing, and oh wow, there's that smell in the air from the fall leaves or something, and oh, there's that sound, and wow, I feel this the touch of skin on sun on my skin. That's interesting. And oh, there's my heartbeat, and oh, there's that thought again, and oh, there's this other thing. It, what I've found in myself is that it doesn't take very long for all of my senses to sort of like drop their
Yeah.
clamoring and realize, wow, there's a lot happening. This is amazing, and
Exactly.
just drop into the present.
Yeah, I'm too busy now producing podcast books and doing these podcasts. But I used to have a coaching practice, and one of them was a, a little metaphoric journey I took people through called A View of Life. And it was amazing at how many things people were not paying attention to, and uh, and how that all the signs they needed, all the encouragement and the people they needed along the way, they ignored because they were too wrapped up in the thought and not using their other senses. And when they became aware of it, it's like, oh, I'm not aware I do that. And I said, well, now just step into your awareness. That's it. Step into your awareness. All those little
Or in other,
things, right?
yeah, or in other words, come back to your senses. You want to come to
Yes.
your senses? Come to
Yes.
your senses.
Yeah, exactly. Literally. Trust your senses. I mean, that's the reason why we are these spiritual beings having a human existence, because we do have these senses.
Mhm.
And these senses are really what the gift of the human self is. The fact that we can touch and taste and feel and hold. And it is extraordinary. It's beautiful. And if we deny those senses, we're denying ourselves the joy of being a human being.
In a very real way, and
Mm,
possibly even some of the greatest joys of being a human being.
yeah, exactly. Now, Built for Freedom, your book, is
Yeah.
it covering what we've talked about today?
Yeah. So, subtitle of it's a long one, but adventures through stress, anxiety, depression, trauma, pain, and our body's innate ability to let go of them all. This is my story.
Hmm.
This is a lot of the discoveries I had. It's a wild ride through plane crashes and science and medical history and where these terms came from and what's really going on at the core of these human experiences, and then how to retrain them. So,
Yeah.
I go deep into all of those things with a lot of case studies of people that I've been able to help and how using these body-based approaches can really be a method or an avenue for quickly
Yeah.
retraining your nervous system to start producing happiness, health, and well-being on their own.
We're meant to be happy. We're meant to, like if we have an owie, we feel pain, fine, kiss it better, and off you go. But we're meant to feel that joy. I mean, that joy is there, accessible for us all the time. And we're seeing so many more wars, so many more people. Kind of that was my chapter in the book, was like, how have we let our children down? That for to feel any sense at all, they gather together as teenagers and go stab someone to death just to feel something. How we let them down so much that that's what they have to do to feel. And I feel that we really need to look at the way we raise our children, the way we support our families, because instead of people having to look at themselves midlife and go, I've been carrying this for so long and that's been pulling me down, can we not look at our children and the system and change that system where our children are fortified with these skills and this knowledge and the beauty and the gifts that they are and carry that with them through their life? So we don't have to look at repair later on, right?
Yeah,
Because,
yeah. I have 6 kids. And that really is a lot of the thinking process that I
mm,
have. To me, I feel like the greatest gift any parent could give their child is a genuinely happy parent.
yes,
Because for the
yeah,
first time, possibly in at least in modern history or in human history, we've got children that are committing, like the number one cause of death is suicide.
I know,
You
I
know,
know.
and there's like some research studies just from a couple years back. Of like children, millions of children who within a 2 week span, a large percentage of them, some 70% of them had thought about
Mhm.
of the polled ones had considered possibly ending their life. Now, maybe at what level was it more of a fleeting thought versus a really persistent thought? I don't know that the research really indicated one way or another. But we've got this massive generation of people that are no longer interested in surviving their parents.
Right. I
Well,
know.
what information are we giving them? Well, if they look at
Exactly.
their parents and their parents are miserable
Yeah.
and they're like, you need to grow up and you need to be like us and live in the
Suck
world
it
like
up.
us. Like what kid? No wonder the kid wants to
Yes.
bury their head in a video game. No wonder the kid wants to
Mm-hmm.
not do this thing because they don't see and feel the joy in their
No,
parents.
no, no.
And so,
I,
like, as a parent, you become joyful.
I'm going to plug the book. I always do. I'm sorry. It's shameless because it is a fundraising book as well. All
There
the
you go.
money proceeds goes to each author's organizations that support families and children. And it's 15 chapters around the raising of our children and the lack of support for our parents or parents with children with who are differently abled. I don't like to use disability, differently abled, and not getting the support they need, and or the children getting the support they need. And whether it's a person with children or work with children or people who just simply see children in the street, it's to bring about the awareness of what we need to do to create the change. And I think it's very apropos for what we're talking about today, because by you taking this journey to become who you are today, you now become that influence over your children. And if they could see, this is how dad handles stress. This is how dad handles depression. This is how dad handles this. He goes through his able, right? And this takes the deep breath. You become that template for them to use in their own life. In one of
Mhm.
the chapters, we have a woman who teaches children yoga and meditational skills, something
Yeah.
they can use their entire life. Why do we wait until they're adults before we teach them? Why are we not teaching these skills to them when they're young? That they can use in every step of their life. So when the parent loves getting up every day, loves their life, loves the spouse, loves the children, loves who they are, then children are growing up with that sense of love and understanding how that love is valued and contained. And I say contained in a way that we can fall out of love if we're not nurturing ourselves, if we're not looking after ourselves, that we are the vessel of love and that we need to
Eh,
fortify that vessel.
Absolutely. I mean, and there's a lot of ways to do it. It's not that there is one way. There is
Uh-uh.
every person will resonate with a different approach and whatnot. So it's not that there is that my method is the only method or the yoga and meditation is the only method. I
Right.
mean, there's a lot of different cultures on the planet, and each of them have solved it differently.
Yes.
Some through religion, some not through religion, some just with the body, some with thought processes or nutrition or any number of things. But the
You've
point
got to
is,
start somewhere, though. That's the thing is
smart.
that,
Yeah.
why do I do these shows? Coming up April, it'll be 12 years I've been doing podcasting. And the reason I do it is to bring people like you on for people to listen, to learn, to apply. Do they
Yeah.
resonate with what you're saying? Right? Maybe they're not where you're at, but they talk to somebody else about it. And the whole thing is to give people that library of resources of people that truly do care and that really want to help people, find these skills and tools that they can apply to themselves so they can find that enrichment and abundance of spirit within themselves. So that's the thing. You've got to be willing to listen, to learn, and apply. And if you're the person that can help them on this journey, then how do they reach out to you? And what is it, the process of what you take people through?
Yeah, so you can go to thefreedomspecialist.com, and that's where we have links to my podcast. We have links to some basic online programs that you can run through that will teach you how to start to gain control over your emotional states or start to deal with some of the deeper, maybe traumatic stuff in your past that's fed into addictive behaviors or anything else. We also run online, like intensive retreats. So they're not online, they're in person,
Mhm.
and they're 5 days long, and they're here in Utah and I'm taking them through all the stuff that to handle the nonverbal pieces of your emotional reaction.
Mhm.
So start to teach you the processes that I've developed for retraining your neurological response, your automatic reflex
Mhm.
response to triggers
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
to your environment and whatnot, so that you can actually start to have an influence over the programming
Yes.
and how your life plays out. And so you can schedule a call with one of our team members, the people that I've trained, and talk with them about your situation. We have a nonprofit organization. My goal is to make everything that we do free for
Mhm.
anybody who needs help. We're not there. We're kind of a long way off still.
Yes.
So if you feel inclined to donate, even a small monthly thing in any way. Every little bit helps.
Everything adds up.
Because
I
I feel
call it
like
the
happiness,
Netflix syndrome, right? Everybody pays a little and it ends up being a lot,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
And because to me, happiness shouldn't be a transaction,
Right.
uh,
Yes.
but rather a gift, and I feel like the planet has somehow lost touch with
Hmm.
something that if we all were in tune with this basic process of how to source joy from within, a lot of the problems that we struggle with in society right now simply wouldn't exist. Like if everybody woke up tomorrow and was like, wow,
Yes.
I feel
Yes, yes, yes,
joyful.
yes, yes. Ah, yes. Yeah, I call it the village syndrome, right? That village is only as strong as everybody's participation, as
Yeah,
everybody's contribution, everybody's skill and joy. And you celebrate the good times and the bad times, and you're there for each other. And we became very, isolated in the sense, like when I grew up, I could take my pram, walk around the neighborhood at 6 years old, and nobody would ever worry. The neighborhood would look out for you,
yeah,
right? And there wasn't that kind of violence. Now, if you don't see them at the bottom of the driveway, you're panicking, right?
yeah,
Because we've created a sick world. And where does that sickness start? It starts from people feeling so disconnected within that they have to look for stimuli out. And for some of them, it takes them round a very dark, dark web into a world that is utterly horrible in so many ways for
yeah,
them and for any of their victims, right? So with this, it's become a sickness and it's kind of hidden. So many people don't know that these people have this sickness because they're hiding. Well, let us put that into the families, into the children, into the society, that sense of joy, how to handle things, be there for each other, and create a society that really does put joy and love at the top of the page rather than kind of, ah, no, we'll never get there. You won't get there with that attitude. You get there with the willing to participate in your own healing by understanding what you need to do.
yeah. The reality is I talk to a lot of people that they don't put it there because they don't believe it's possible.
Mm.
They
Everything is
don't believe,
possible.
yeah. So they
Right.
don't believe it's possible. And so they look at me and they're like, but it's so hard to be happy.
Yeah.
And I look at them, I'm like, tell me about the last time you were happy. Was that difficult? It's easy to be happy. It's hard to be miserable.
It takes more energy to be miserable. And we don't realize that the reason why you're tired is that by being miserable or angry or angst all the way through your day is using up more energy than it does to be in a state of love and joy.
Yeah.
Love, the heart regenerates itself. The more love you give away, the more your heart generates, right? So it just keeps on giving, and you just from the love that you give regenerates the love back to you. And that takes no energy at all because it's beautiful regenerative energy. But to hate, to want vengeance or seeking power or all of those things just chew up so much energy and it leaves you depleted and you don't have enough energy to apply. So we have to decide that I'm not going to feed that energy anymore. I need the skills, I need the tools to walk away from that darkness, cross the road to the sunny side of the street, but we're willing to do the work.
Yeah. So if people were interested in my book, it's on Amazon, or you can buy it on our PDF version on our website for like $5. If you purchase it on Amazon, just go to the website or let us know, shoot us a message. I have a guidebook with it with some basic processes that are introduced in the book with step by step on how to do it. So we'll send you that as well. And so
Wonderful.
just so that you can get them started.
So you do retreats and you work with people one on one and you work with people in groups and things as well. Do you do
Yes.
couples?
Uh-huh. I've worked with couples. The main process in a couple is learn how to handle your own misery, start to develop joy, and then learn how to communicate. I mean, you got to learn that as a couple.
So the site is thefreedomspecialist.com. On Instagram, I'm built for freedom. In
Mhm.
Facebook, The Freedom Specialist, and in YouTube, Freedom Specialist. And what's your podcast, love?
It's called Alive and Free with Bob Gardner. So live and free podcast.libsyn.com. It's on Spotify, it's on Apple, it's on all these other ones. It's got a picture of a mountain with a guy with his hands wide in big air. Alive and free. There's a
And
couple of
is it
alive and
just you? Do you interview other people?
I rarely interview other people. These have been me and recently the last year or so has been another member of my team, and we're just usually taking something that has come up with clientele and bringing it up to the surface and being, let's talk through this for everybody else. Or we're taking topics that feel like, I mean, I'm there trying to help people break
Right.
all of the worldviews that they just never thought to challenge and
Yes.
that be producing their misery without them even realizing it. And so,
So your podcasts are very often kind of like a tutorial for people.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So if people, you just want to start off by listening to the podcast and getting a feel for it, because maybe they're not ready to reach out, but the podcast will lay the ground
yeah,
and
yeah,
listen to how it is possible, things that they can address. There'll be something along there that they relate to and go, oh boy, you're talking about me. All
yeah, yeah,
right. And that's when you're ready to reach out and start the conversation. And nobody can do it for you. People can help you on your journey, right? They can give you
absolutely.
the encouragement, the skills, the tools. You've got to apply them. You've got to do the walking. You've got to want to, right? And when you want to, whether it's the nudge, wink, wink, or cosmic 2x4, whatever's got you there, then Bob and his team are there to help you. You're not alone, but you have to be willing. That first leap is the first step. You have to be willing to participate in your own healing by doing what is necessary to deprogram, to reprogram, and put yourself and your senses in a state that carries you forward and doesn't hold you back.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being with us here today. Um, some great topics there, some great skills. I love the able. And anything is possible. Absolutely anything is possible if we choose to feed it. Because what we seed and what we feed and how we nurture it is what's going to grow. If you keep getting the same old weeds, you're not planting the right seeds. So start planting some beautiful flowers in your soul garden and nurture it, because the more you rise up to a higher frequency of vibration, the more joy you have in the world, the more you actually become the healing for this world. So we need everyone out there in their joy, right?
Absolutely. And everybody has a thing to contribute that the world has never seen. So
Exactly. And
bring it
now
on,
is the
folks.
time. Now
We
is the
want to see it.
time, right? Yeah, don't wait for tomorrow. Now, please. The present is the gift of the
Yeah,
now. So until next time, folks, we know you've got it in you. Just activate it and let's see you smile. Until next time, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. There are so many more for you here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. Just go to the podcast tag at the top there and you will see all the many genres and all 3,000 shows ready for your listening. We are here to serve you, to help you on your journey of life, and we know that through inspiration it begets invitation. We are supported by you, the listeners, and those that we interview. Anything that you can spare us in donation would be greatly accepted, and we do hope that you enjoy the next show.